I think many of you know Scott. Scott is not only a dynamo in trying to get some of this acute care work off the ground, but understands better than any of us why this needs to happen, given his experience with traumatic brain injury himself. So, Scott.
All right. See if I can make this work. All right. Well, greetings, everybody. I'm sorry I'm not there with you. It's a remarkable group. I don't think I'm officially a member of the forum, but I've been invited. I keep being invited, and I keep turning up, and it's always a pleasure to see firsthand the good work you're doing. The fun that I'm getting to have now is that you all worked in the Action Collaborative, which represents, of course, some people who aren't with you right now. Hundreds of hours, I think, volunteer hours, I should note, went into you're really working on a shared vision of what post-acute care ought to look like for the millions of people who got their clock cleaned or the bell rung or are on that upper side of the GCS scale. And then again, consistent with the PACC-TBI data, 2 out of 3 of which have challenging symptoms more than a month afterwards, and most of whom are getting no care. And you all properly saw that something ought to be done about this. What I'm glad to tell you is that the ideas that model that you came up with is actually starting to happen in some places, and it's going to happen in more. So that's the fun. Because it's a great model you all came up with, but it really doesn't matter unless it's happening somewhere. And if we can't structure things so that we're learning from it as it actually happens. Again, I'm sort of boiling it down in a way, but as a reminder, ultimately the model is all about early access, and we're really focusing on serving people within the first 6 months of their injury. The multidisciplinary approach is key, but as I've seen, even more important is having the full-time patient coordinator, the hub. And you all worked hard on figuring out what the right symptom assessments are, and we're trying to be really careful, very mindful about making sure those are done with every clinic visit, and hopefully even more often if we can figure out a way to do it with a good measure of outcomes. Almost as important, maybe as important, I'll say as important as the full-time patient coordinator, of course, is the quality control manager, the person whose full-time responsibility. They're up the flagpole for conscientiously collecting that data and then sharing it appropriately with the group. In collaborative learning, it's a part that you focused on. What I'm seeing is that's really important in the multidisciplinary team at the clinic site, and it's starting to become really important and valuable in the sort of the national collaborative that we're creating. Patient-centered, you know all about, and the community engagement, and with respect to especially the educational materials we've talked about, you all worked really hard. The Action Collaborative worked really hard on figuring out what are the right educational materials, but of course then got blown up at the CDC, and they now have finding a good permanent home. But those educational materials are good to have at discharge, and they're even more important and useful, and actually might get read and will guide people if we can get them to them post-acute after they're home and starting to encounter those challenges. So those are the essence. Is just a quick reminder of the model that you came up with. The great thing, of course, is that Jeff got to be a good conversant friend with Sandy Weil and his wife Joan, and they have made it possible for us to offer a challenge grant to sites who want to create a model post-acute care clinic. And if you're starting from scratch, it's going to be round about $100,000 as a challenge grant each year for 3 years, which is then, of course, requiring people to find some local donors who can help make it happen and maybe even sustain it in a great way afterwards. For that challenge grant, you just have to have these things in place. The patient coordinator navigator, the data manager, weekly team meetings, whether they're virtual or in person, they are key. That conversation is just powerful. You've got agreed to do the assessments that the Action Collaborative selected and focus on that outcome measurement. And by the outcome measurement, I'm really talking about the GOSI and the promise at 6 months. So it's not just have the symptoms improved, but what is the patient's outcome? Has the game been worth the candle? How is the patient doing? The data sharing with the collaborative and also just monthly check-ins is something that I think the growing number of members of the collaborative are finding valuable when we talk each month and just are able to compare notes. Those 7 pillars are now being implemented or will soon be implemented in 7 sites across the country. The 2 that are really have been up and running for a while now, you've heard about a little bit with Javier in West Virginia, which is just a pleasure to spend time see what they're doing, and the same is true at the Weil Institute at UCSF in San Francisco. They've already seen hundreds of patients and are learning from what they're doing. The work that Noah and his team did, those guidelines are not easy to implement, and it's going to take a little while to get the 100% implementation of the guidelines, but everyone's working toward it. And things will come into place in Cincinnati and in Indianapolis, at the University of Pittsburgh, and Mike is sort of getting things restarted in Milwaukee. But it's a great group. Again, over 3 years with this group working, we're going to have 5,000 patients or more come through those clinic doors with lots and lots of data, and we're looking for more sites are going to come on as sort of start from scratch clinic sites. And then we were also going to be start working with pre-existing clinics who are doing a lot of the work that you all imagined as the ideal, but they just need to maybe work on a few things to really meet that model. We're going to have them become part of the collaborative as well, so we can just grow this family and this learning community to really come up with a great model with great results and even more lessons. In 3 years, lots of data, lots of lessons learned. Hopefully, we'll see a lot of that data that shows that the patient outcomes are great, and a viable business model. I mean, I don't think we yet have all the answers here, but if we're going to make this model worthwhile, one of the things we need to do is make sure that the hotel administrator doesn't grimace when you say post-acute care clinic for traumatic brain injury. So we're going to be focusing on that and how we can make it. If it's not, how can we make it a viable business model? That's the goal. That's what we hope to have in a few years. These are just a few personal observations I have from my work as the sort of the coordinator of this collaborative so far, is that the inter-site collaboration is powerful. I mean, I think everybody in so many walks of life now just feels the silos are so limiting, and the silos in your work are taller and thicker in some ways. So just having that conversation among people trying to accomplish the same goals with very similar patients is big. A little bit of a surprise for me as the layman in all this is that the human capital shortages are a big hurdle. I mean, in Milwaukee, I think one of the challenges has been just making it possible to have a neurosurgeon or a neurologist as a part of the team. And almost everywhere, I think, Javier, in West Virginia, you've got this tackled, but most places having mental health as a part of the team, a psychologist or psychiatrist or more to really provide that support is a huge missing piece. I think we've got some work to do in this area in lots of ways. One thing we discovered, and I know Jeff, I know you've got some great stories about this in particular, but mutual patient and clinic expectations of each other is turning out to be really important. What can I expect of you if I'm a patient coming to the clinic? The clinic needs to make that really clear. Here's what we can and here's what we can't do for you. And here's what we expect of you, patient. I mean, this in some ways sounds simple. It's not done very often, and it's super, super important. The collection of symptom data, it's not easy. I mean, it's a long list of assessments you all chose, but it actually on the street, it doesn't take that long to guide patients through that questionnaires. I think it could be even better if it were all digitized and it was something that they could do frequently on their phones, if it were read to them, et cetera. But that's a little bit of a challenge, is just to collect that symptom data on the assessments that you chose. And then maybe even more challenging is getting that outcome data, because you all know better than I do, but so many of us as patients, when we're feeling better, we're like, okay, I'm done with that, moving on. And don't talk to me. Don't say the word concussion or traumatic brain injury. I'm done with that. I'm not going to go back to that clinic. I'm feeling fine. I'm back to work. It's so hard to get people to fill out that survey and to answer the phone and answer those questions about how they're doing 6 months after the injury. And we still need to crack that code in terms of how we can really do that reliably. As I mentioned, the weekly team meetings, that either virtual or in person, are super important. It's just amazing how, Javier, I just remember sitting in both San Francisco and in West Virginia, when a whole team, that multidisciplinary team, can talk about a patient's coming in, and the psychologist is able to offer what he or she learned at the last appointment they had. It's the old elephant analogy. Everyone's gotten just a slightly different piece or a look. And suddenly here's a whole group talking about the person as a human being, and they're learning from each other and making observations about that patient that they might not have made on their own. The weekly team meetings are critical in my view. And then the last observation is, I think this is true, at least in my experience and observation, it's true of medical care generally, but everything's so specialized and referrals, and it's up to the patient or the caregiver to try to make sense of it all and pull it all together. And that patient navigator not only is key to make the multidisciplinary team work and make all those wheels move the right way, but just helping make sense of it for the patient as well. It's a really important part of the model that you all created. But it's fun to have been a part of the conversations for a couple of years about what this model ought to look like, to actually seeing it in action and starting to see it take hold in lots of other communities, and with the promise that in a few years' time, we're going to have thousands of patients who have been through the model that you've created, and hopefully, and I would bet an awful lot of money, we're going to see substantially better outcomes as a result. I guess what you all have been talking about, the blood biomarkers, and I think, Jeff, you mentioned AI being able to read the scans and what we've seen happening with stroke and some of those tools, and much more that we can't imagine that's going to be happening a year or two from now. It's a good bet that the diagnoses of TBI all across the country is going to substantially increase. So that might put a little bit of pressure on this model that you've created. Hopefully, we might need to substantially increase the number of post-acute care clinics that we have operating. But I'm also thinking we've got some great 21st century tools that are now coming to hospitals in acute care and for diagnosis. And there might be some things we ought to be thinking about with respect to the post-acute care model that need to be brought into the 21st century as well. And that's my report. And I'm just thrilled to be working on this and seeing it come to life.
Thanks very much, Scott. And we're fortunate to have you really dedicating so much time to this. and getting things organized. And, you know, I think we do have to provide a model for how this is going to work. And I think one of the gaps